Hello everyone, I'm Eric Rain, and in today's video we are going to take a look at several interesting Baldur's Gate 3 secrets that you've most likely missed. Let's make a deal. If this video contains even one secret you didn't know about and you found it interesting, then all I'm asking is for a like. And if this video gets enough likes, I'll definitely make a part 2. But without further ado, let's jump straight into the first secret. Cassador's palace in Act 3 is full of small environmental stories, but one of my favorites is hidden inside this room. At first glance, nothing here seems out of the ordinary. However, if you open the coffin next to the bed, you'll discover the body of a dead man. At first, it looks like he met the same fate as all the other vampire spawn in the palace, and was just another victim of Cassador. But that's actually not what happened. If you walk over to the bed and pass a perception check, you'll discover the man's diary. From it, we learn that Cassador was preparing a ritual that required a certain number of vampire spawn. And since Astarion had disappeared, this unfortunate guy was most likely supposed to take his place and sacrifice himself instead. Wanting to avoid that fate, he came up with a clever plan. He ordered a potion that would only imitate death while placing a real poison nearby to make the lie more convincing. The problem is that we never actually find the poison. Instead, all that's left is an empty bottle and a bottle of wine. If you search the room next door, however, you'll discover the very same feign death potion hidden inside a desk in identical bottle. The poor guy accidentally drank the poison instead of the fake death potion. He wanted to trick Cassador but ended up tricking himself instead. By the way, even if you don't care about this little story, you should still pick up the potion. Unlike most consumables in the game, it doesn't cost an action, so it's possible to find use for it. The next secret can be found near the entrance to the Blighted Village. Right next to one of the walls, you'll find a rather unusual looking book. At first glance, it doesn't seem particularly interesting, but if you open it, you'll discover that it's actually a hidden container with a bottle of wine inside. Because of the way Baldur's Gate 3 handles containers, you can keep this book and use it as your own secret stash. And yes, it can hold as many items as you want, even though it's just a book. I'm sure most of you remember the quest in Myconid Colony, where we have to rescue the husband of that rather grumpy woman. He's trapped in a field of poisonous mushrooms nearby, and we're supposed to throw him a scroll of Misty Step so he can escape and return to his wife. As you may remember, however, she isn't exactly thrilled to see him again. After talking to the couple, we learn 3 interesting things. First of all, it turns out that the wife has a very good reason to resent her husband. Before becoming not so sharp, he was apparently far from harmless. And from information that we get, he was even physically abusive. That explains the scars on the wife's face. Though at some point, the husband literally became simple-minded, and now he's just a little more than a burden who cannot handle even the simplest tasks. Finally, we learned that the couple came to the Underdark in search of the Noble Stalk, a rare mushroom that can cure almost any illness. This mushroom is incredibly easy to miss, because it's also surrounded by the poisonous mushrooms. If you accidentally trigger them, they'll set off a chain reaction that will eventually destroy the noble stalk. Fortunately, if you're careful enough, you can collect it safely. Once you return to Myconid Colony, you'll have several different options. Probably the kindest one, and also the smartest, is to give the mushroom to the wife. She plans to sell it once she reaches Baldur's Gate. This will help her tremendously since she's struggling financially. As a reward, she'll invite you to visit her shop in Act 3, because there you can buy an infinite amount of noble stalks that in fact fully restore your health and cure all the negative effects. The second option is much better suited for an evil playthrough. If you give the noble stalk to her husband instead, he'll regain his intelligence and immediately go back to being a complete piece of garbage of a human being. Needless to say that his wife won't be happy about that. In fact, even the nearby mule comments on what happened. What many players don't know, however, is that the Noble Stalk has even more uses. For example, you can give it to Shadowheart to restore some of her lost memories. If you are playing as the Dark Urge, you can also eat the mushroom yourself to recover a small part of your own forgotten past. The next secret can be found in the Arcane Tower in the Underdark. I'm sure most of you have explored this place before. Probably you restored the power, made your way to the top, killed all the robots, looted everything inside and moved on. Nothing special, right? Well, not exactly. Players who took the time to read the notes and books scattered throughout the tower could unlock a unique dialogues with Bernard, and instead of fighting him, you can actually give him a hug. Yeah, it's surprisingly wholesome and also pretty heartbreaking. From everything we learned throughout the tower, it seems that Lenore, the wizard who once lived here, became so lonely that she programmed Bernard to comfort her with a hug. And yeah, to unlock this and many other dialogue options with him, you'll need to read almost everything in the tower. The next secret actually begins in Act 1 and doesn't conclude until Act 3. It's also incredibly easy to miss because it requires one thing that many players simply never bother doing. Of course, I'm talking about speaking with animals. Head over to the Emerald Grove, cast Speak with Animals, or drink a potion that grants the same effect, and then talk to the strange ox. If you pass the arcane check, your character will immediately realize that something is very wrong with this ox. At this point, however, it refuses to reveal any details. Interestingly enough, the game gives us another clue. Unlike every other ox nearby, this one has several unusual passive effects, including immunity to acid damage, dark vision, and a few others. That's definitely not normal. The second time we'll encounter the ox is in Act 2, just outside the last Light Inn. This time it reveals something rather horrifying. It becomes pretty obvious that the strange ox is far from an ordinary animal. Here we can force it to reveal its true form, although doing so will immediately start a fight. As you can see, the strange ox was actually an ooze, a creature from the Forgotten Realms universe that feeds on both living and dead flesh. If, however, you choose to keep its secret, you'll meet it one final time in Act 3. This time, the ooze asks you to help it enter the city. Simply agree, carry it into Baldur's Gate in the form of an apple, and you'll be rewarded with the unique Shapeshifter's Boon Ring. You'll also receive a personal thank you letter. Helping the ooze means it will come to your aid during the final battle. It's a really cool little quest that many players never get to experience. That said, even if you completely ignored the strange ox during Acts 1 and 2, you can still help it once you reach Act 3. Alternatively, you can simply kill it back in Act 1. Doing so rewards you with the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring immediately. You can then use it with the mask of the Shapeshifter that you get by default if you own the Digital Deluxe Edition DLC. The great thing about this mask is that you can cast Disguise Self without using any spell slots, and the effect stays active even if you take the mask off, so you can keep the ring's effect active at all times. The last secret is related to a secret interaction with an item. Near the Emerald Grove, you'll find a small rock with a hole filled with spiders. If you pass the required skill check, you'll be able to loot a small pouch. Along with some gold, you'll also find a spider egg sac. What many players don't realize is that you can actually throw and break this item to summon several friendly spiders. Moreover, you can buff them as any other summons. And in the beginning of the game, they can actually be pretty useful, at least because of the fact that they can actually soak up some hits for you. But I think that's all for today. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future Baldur's Gate 3 content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.